So when you meet somebody and they ask, what do you do? How do you respond?
That's a good question. It's kind of hard because not a lot of people really know what it is, but I like to tell people I create web-based interactive content.
Mm.
Sometimes if they're a little bit more techy, I'll throw in augmented or mixed reality experiences, and typically the conversation starts to go towards like Pokemon Go because that's the best way to really get people to understand what I work with. But yeah, just interactive, gamified content on the web.
Interactive gamified content. Okay, I like that. So a lot of people think of it as entertainment and games, but do you see a potential for use cases outside of the entertainment field for AR and
Yeah, for sure. I think games are always the easiest, lowest hanging fruit when it comes to interactive content. Um, it's really easy to entertain people through video games and kind of get people onboarded that way. But one of the things that I've been trying to focus on in my career so far is applying gamified elements to other types of content, whether that be educational, whether that be marketing. We're starting to see a lot more of a push in enterprise and in industrial use cases for augmented reality and virtual reality, whether that be through training, through wayfinding in complicated areas. There's a lot of really, really like applicable and very util use cases for augmented and virtual reality.
yeah, I mean, at Immersive, we think about that a lot. I want to ask you, when it comes to industrial and enterprise, do they still, in your opinion, do they still respond to the word gamify?
um, no, I mean you kind of have to pitch it a different way. It when it comes down to it, you're usually gamifying things, but
Yeah.
to me, gamification is creating interactivity and creating
Yes.
something that um, you know, gets those mundane tasks that nobody really wants to do
Yes.
and makes them more engaging. So to me, that is gamification, is making things that aren't necessarily engaging engage the user so that they don't really mind doing what they're doing, and it kind of changes the way that their mentality about the tasks that they're doing at the time.
Yeah, I think you made a great point there. Gamify doesn't have to mean Space Invaders. Gamify
Yes,
means, yeah, and getting you engaged, maybe setting a target and aiming for a target, a goal, a purpose. That's gamifying, right?
yeah, and like one of the easiest things I can think of is if you're doing like a wayfinding thing inside of a warehouse. Let's say you're trying to get from point A to point B. If I'm going to gamify an experience like that, my first thought is creating like a mini map or like a HUD, like you would see inside of maybe a first person shooter, guiding somebody to the next objective. Like it's just taking elements from a video game. It's not necessarily turning it into a video game, but taking things that we've researched and spent decades doing inside of video games we know that work, and applying them to things that don't have that element yet. So
Yeah, and the end result being just the person doing whatever it is they have to do more efficiently, you know, just doing the job better, right?
exactly, yeah, and not hating doing it. Maybe finding a little bit more enjoyment in it.
Okay, cool. Well, let's take a look at a couple of examples. So, stuff that you've worked on. So right now, what do we have here? I'm looking at this Dr. Pepper's Maverick Mixology AR game. Can you talk to me about this?
Yeah, so that was a project where we went into it and the client just kind of said, "Hey, let's make something fun. Let's get something that'll get a lot of views and get some good dwell time in the experience." So, at the time when we were building it, Eighth Wall had just released some of their new face tracking functionality, and they had just shown off a sample project of somebody playing a viral TikTok trend, but in Eighth Wall, in augmented reality on the web. Um, it was one where you kind of rotate your head left and right to choose between two different options, and I saw that functionality and it kind of inspired me to create a game that used that interactivity. So this game, the Maverick Mixology game, you're trying to make as many recipes as you can in a certain time limit. That's inspired by a lot of games, like Cooking Mama is one of the ones, or Overcooked 2. Like those style of games where you're owning a restaurant, you're trying to get as many orders out as you can, and you only have a certain time to do it. So, and Maverick actually did a social media campaign where if you beat a certain score and you took a picture at the end wearing the Maverick bucket cap with your score on the screen, then they would send you a coupon through their app for a free 44-ounce soda from their fountains. So it was a lot of fun and very interactive. You know, we saw 5 minutes of dwell time, a 4 to 5 minutes of dwell time average, and it was a very, very engaging experience that was very successful.
I would like to talk a little bit about location-based AR. Like, do you have any experience with it, and what are your thoughts on the the usefulness of location-based AR, where digital stuff is anchored to a specific physical location?
Yeah, I've done a couple of experiences like that. When I was at the agency that I was prior to where I am now, we were actually invited to participate in Niantic's launch of the VPS system on Eighth Wall. So we built a fun little experience, kind of marketing the VR game we were working on at the time around our office inside, and that was fun to be a part of. But I've also worked on, projects for booths at a convention before.
Yeah.
We wanted to make a convention. It was a big car wash convention, and their booths are giant. So you can walk around and see tons of different things inside of it. And we wanted to give people a way to interact with some of the content and some of the things that they had inside of the booth in a new way. So we had different areas where you could walk inside of the booth and you could, interact with a pump that was on the car wash. We wanted to show people how to break it down, how to repair it, how to clean out some of the stuff inside of it, and then how to put it back together and put it back into the machine. So, with wayfinding, you can kind of do those things, but on site in different areas. My dad works in power generation, so his people work on giant generators, and some of those facilities can be, a maze to get around. But if you had a wayfinding application, you could say exactly what you're looking for, and then you could have arrows, kind of like what we dreamed about when the Google Glass first was pitched, and when that was a concept early on, but an arrow pointing you exactly where you need to walk to, and then maybe having something big highlighting a specific part. You could take that part out, and then it could, walk you through how to deconstruct it and then how to put it back together. So wayfinding is kind of one of the biggest tools of the future of the industry for me personally. That's where I think there's going to be a lot of use for it. And it's probably something that the majority of consumers will never realize how big that part of the industry is.
What's your opinion on, I mean, what advantages does VPS have over GPS? Like, why can't we do wayfinding with GPS?
With GPS, um, there's a level of accuracy I feel like that you lose when you're going into things that are more detailed.
Yeah,
You want something like a visual twin, so you know exactly, so your device knows exactly what you're looking at. With GPS, you don't really get that. It's kind of just a you're here type of a thing, and then it doesn't really
y-
take any of the camera's data into
right,
what you're seeing and the content that you're able to interact. Where with VPS, if you have a digital twin of the facility that you're looking at, your phone can calculate exactly what you're looking at, and then you can dial in and pinpoint into
exactly.
specific things that you're trying to work with. It's a lot more, I guess, useful because you're able to dial in on the exact parts and things that you want to interact
Yeah,
with.
I think that's, I think you hit the nail. GPS is useful if you need to travel from Dallas to Houston across the desert. But if, VPS is useful if you need to identify this specific piece of machinery.
Yeah, and I think a combination of both of those
Yeah.
things can be very powerful. One of my favorite things to imagine. So I grew up my like I said, my dad works in power generation. He's a salesman. I grew up driving across the country every summer, going from conference to conference. I grew up in the convention halls of the things that my dad did. So we would drive across the country a lot. And I love envisioning a world where, in the past, you used to have different places where you could stop to find entertainment. Like there were the world's largest rubber band ball was like one of the attractions I remember going to when I was a little kid. And just imagine having all of those like crazy waypoints that you had on a GPS, but then adding VPS into it as well. So doing a cross country trip, but then being able to navigate and find these awesome VPS locations along the way so that you turn your maybe mundane trip into an adventure where you get to explore a lot of awesome digital content that is only visible in those specific areas.
And we've all experienced going indoors, going into a mall or going into the basement, losing GPS signal
Yeah,
because you don't have direct line of sight to the satellite.
for
But with
sure.
VPS, that doesn't happen because it doesn't, it just we're looking at the visual information.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot more, I mean, useful in areas where if you're thinking about like a giant facility or a factory or something, like a lot of those places don't really have great service. And if you have somebody that's maybe like repairing something as a guest, you don't necessarily want to have them on the Wi-Fi. So VPS really helps with those types of things as well, where you can get somebody in there, they have the data and information downloaded they need for like the digital twin, and they're able to get access to what they need to get to without having to constantly have a connection.
All right, so let's talk about one more clip. What are we looking at here? Van Gogh interactive AR experience.
Yeah, so this was a really fun experience to be a part of. It was about 2 or 3 years ago. There's kind of a trend where these immersive Van Gogh exhibits were traveling across the country. They were exhibits where they had giant projectors and they were projecting Van Gogh's pieces on the walls, so you felt like you were immersed inside of it.
Mhm.
So they were awesome exhibits, and they came to us asking for our own kind of side exhibit towards the end of the experience. They wanted to have 5 frames with kind of blobs of paint inside of them, and they wanted to
Wow,
turn those into, you know, full depth
love it.
versions of Van Gogh's pieces of arts that had some animations in there to make them come to life.
Love it.
So we were able to use image tracking technology through augmented reality to overlay digital content on top of those frames, and then give people a way to kind of experience Van Gogh's paintings from a new lens. It was a lot of fun to be a part of. They also wanted to use it as an educational experience. So if you see in that video, you hold your phone up, the digital content overlays on top of the physical content, and then blobs of paint that are kind of the 3 main colors of the painting fly out at the user, and they're just kind of floating there. So you tap each blob, and it comes with different quotes, different things about Van Gogh, about his life, about some of his inspirations and stuff for the paintings. And it kind of guides the user to learning more about Van Gogh while being able to experience his content in a way that has never been possible before.
Man, can you imagine what these guys would think if they could see, you know, stuff from their mind? They put it onto the canvas, and now people of the future are going into it.
Yeah, I personally like one of my dreams is to start creating more immersive exhibits in art like that. I grew up, I'm not artistic at all. I'm a very like technical person. That's why I love the artists that I work with, because they're able to take my technical ramblings and turn it into something that looks awesome. But I want to be able to give people a way to experience classical pieces of art in a way that nobody has ever really envisioned yet. feel like that is something that is really, really powerful. And there's so much open source and Creative Commons artworks out there now that, you could create awesome exhibits around.
Mm. Cool. Before we finish, one more question. What's your opinion on handheld devices, and are people willing to stay on the phone for long enough to experience this? Are we waiting for the headsets? Is that what we're waiting for before this technology becomes ubiquitous? Or do you think it's possible to have a meaningful experience with a handheld device?
Oh, 100% you can have a meaningful experience with a device right now. Right now, I don't think people need to wait to experience augmented reality. You can do things that blow your mind, that blow the mind of your friends and families through augmented reality on your phone. I enjoy developing and creating these experiences because I love seeing the way that people interact with them and react to them. Um, if it was just me building them for me, I'd probably get tired of them after a while. But there's nothing more rewarding and exciting than showing somebody the world of augmented and virtual reality for the first time. Um, and, they're able to have these experiences that really change the way that they think about technology, about the world around them, and about the future of what is possible. So, mobile phones are, I mean, it's the entry point. It's what everybody's using right now. In my opinion, if we don't get it, people experiencing augmented and virtual reality on devices that they already have, we might never get to the point where we have those devices in the mainstream. With all technology, there's kind of paving stones and like steps to get us to the point where we're going to get. To me, mobile phones is just one of those steps along the path to where the XR technology is going to be in the future. So it's important that we do get people involved early on because if we are able to do that, then it will make them excited for the technology that comes out in the future and it'll make it more successful.